In the week after the June 24th primary election for mayor, I was determined to meet with voters in conservative neighbourhoods where Assemblyman Zoran Mamdani, D. Astoria, a democratic socialist, had performed surprisingly well. In a Howard Beach precinct where Mamdani won, I met a couple who, despite being conservative, voted for Mamdani because bizarrely they thought he had run to the right of former Governor Andrew Cuomo and believed he was Italian American as his name ended in I. And he was from Astoria. The famous Mamdani mafia organization.
Hey, I'm Mr. Mamdani.
It does. To be fair, it does sound actually. I've never thought of it like that. It does sound a bit Italian, I guess.
When I first started talking about Mariano Mazzucato on stream, people thought I was talking about a Japanese person. By the way,
it does sound a bit Japanese, yeah.
Because it obviously it's got a double Z in it, right? Which is why it's Mazzucato, which is it's an Italian name. She's Italian American British. But you could think of it being spelled Matsuko.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's just generally hilarious that they could think that this democratic socialist is the one to the right of Andrew Cuomo. But actually, whilst this is very funny, the next paragraph is really revealing as to the dynamics that play out in the minds of the American voter.
Okay. When I dug further into why they thought he was running to the right of Cuomo, they noted that it was because he discussed prices and cost of living. What? As Donald Trump had in 2024. They both voted for Trump. They had a hard time believing Mamdani was a socialist because they believe socialists support making everything more expensive. What the fuck are you what? This is the ignorance we have to fight against. These people vote and their candidates get elected.
I mean, that's the thing, right? It's the Onion meme of we taught this chimpanzee the opinions of a median voter and it hanged itself.
Yeah, literally. Like, honestly, I'm feeling more suicidal than I was previously.
What I think is really important to learn from this is that all of that discussion around how, the American voting public thought Kamala Harris was too left-wing and the Democrats had gone hyper-liberal and hyper-left, despite the fact that they just hadn't, was basically because they thought that, the only thing that mattered was cultural politics and only the right to talk about the economy. And it doesn't matter whether you're a democratic socialist or whether you're a centrist or whatever, start talking about the cost of living crisis, start talking about affordability, start talking in terms of the economy, and people will support you and not think that you're left-wing. It also means that lots of people believe themselves to be centrist and in fact have lots of different opinions that are neither left nor right-wing or can be both, right?
Yeah.
Like lots of people who call themselves centrist. I mean, this is another tweet that I thought was quite funny. I never forget sitting in a Democratic Party meeting in Appalachian, Ohio, and a man said the Democrats would win again if they returned to the centre. I asked what return to the centre means, and he said, universal health care, raising the minimum wage, and fighting big pharma.
Amazing.
Which is always for a left wing.
Yeah, 100%, yeah. Again, the understanding of the average American, and to be fair, this is massively different in Britain in many respects.
No, it isn't at all, yeah.
Yeah, the idiocy of the median British voter is just replete. We could go through it forever.
Ironically, universal healthcare, raising the minimum wage, and fighting big pharma should be centrist politics. But that should be the politics of the centre.
Yeah, it should be a basic, let's make people's lives better, should be centrism.
Yeah, like engaging in antitrust, making sure that the bottom end of the economy, the people with the highest propensity for consumption, have enough money to consume to drive economic growth, and taking the parts of the economy that have an inelastic market and decommodifying them so everyone has access to them, because otherwise people will charge you whatever and charge you through the nose and it'll be economically deleterious, right? Again, none of these things are radical left politics. They are just radical left politics in the mind of, not the American voter, but the American political class, because they live in this world where there's this discrete spectrum from right to left, and there's hyper left-wing politics and hyper right-wing politics, and none of these things can be done based upon their actual positive utility. And in the mind of the voter, it's totally different. Yeah. They think left and right is liberal, conservative, woke versus anti-woke, and regardless, they can look at each economic policy and think about it in the round. And again, it's perceptive of that voter we just talked about there who thought that universal healthcare was centrist politics to go, yeah, that's fine. Call me a centrist. I'll run on these things and I'll call myself a centrist and I'll win. Because it doesn't matter. It's about the perception. Yeah. It's about the vibes rather than the actual policy, which is, again, why democratic socialists, progressive party candidates, and why Bernie Sanders was so effective, why everyone loved him. They didn't think of him as woke. They didn't think of him as liberal. They didn't even think of him necessarily as a socialist. They saw him as the guy who talks about the economy and the working man.
You need to address people's actual specific interests, and needs, right? Don't get wrapped up in this we need to be sensible shit. Actually address it. Talk about things like prices, because that's what people lived with day to day. Look, honestly, any politician in Britain who could just sort out the fucking potholes would win every election. It seems like such an unsexy, tiny little thing, and yet it's the every day-to-day thing that people fucking see in front of them. It's a sign of a country that's completely fucked because we can't even maintain roads, something that the Roman Empire did.
And that's why Mamdani has become such like a international sensation, because he does the things that the mayor should do, which Eric Adams didn't do, you know?
Yeah.
Mike Bloomberg didn't do it. Bill de Blasio did it for a lesser extent than Mamdani, but he's good at publicizing it. But on a macro, on a national level, on a federal level, the Democrats don't do anything. They literally refuse to govern properly. They are quite the party of we literally can't govern. And the Republican Party can get stuff done, and what they do is terrible, and everyone hates it, and they're not in any way concerned with anything that is of any relevance to regular people, because they're too busy implementing, like, Christian nationalist Sharia, Al-Qaeda style politics, or trying to start trade wars with everyone and their mum, or trying to implement Project 2025 and trying to expel people from the country for being too brown. None of these things are in any way approaching the concerns of the median voter. And Mamdani comes along and goes, I am doing the basic stuff that you expect. Filling the potholes, making the buses work on time, making sure that water fountains are there and we do kind of civic infrastructure, and that we've got bins that are available to put your rubbish in. Like, this shouldn't be difficult. But in American politics, it is difficult because the Democrats are just, or the corporate Democrats especially, are shit at literally everything, and the Republicans are uniquely concerned with Christian nationalism.
Yeah. True. Vicky, you're kind of right. Yeah, Mamdani is taking inspiration from the sewer socialists because it's literally about like addressing people's, concrete needs. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. 100%. I mean, it's probably why Andy Burnham was so popular in Manchester. Is that just like Manchester was functional in a way that lots of other places in the country just weren't.
Yeah, exactly. But it's become so fucking pathetically reduced that literally just having a government that kind of works is enough. That in of itself is enough for most people.
Exactly. And also, I think this other quote here about they believed socialist support making everything more expensive shows you the level to which that there has been huge amounts of like manufactured consent and brain poison amongst Americans about what anything is, The
right wing conservatoids, fascistoids, whatever, don't want to talk about economics. That's why the culture war thing carries on the way it does, because they'd literally rather talk about fucking anything than economics, because they realize that their economics are fucking the poor, and if the poor ever actually open their eyes and realize that, they'd be out of office and indeed in camps.
100%. And I think it is indicative of why Francesca Hong wasn't as successful as she could have been. Again, she did get loads of votes. It was an impressive run, even though she didn't win. But getting bogged down in cultural stuff about Thanksgiving is not talking about boilerplate economic concerns, and she wasn't adept enough at what Mamdani does, which whenever people try and bring up things that are not about cost of living, the affordability agenda that he was trying to pursue, he would always turn it back to the affordability agenda, right? It's not just we hate Israel because they're committing genocide, even though that's true. It is there is money that could be being spent on building schools and fixing roads and maintaining American society that they're sending to Israel to give them universal healthcare.
Exactly. Well, I mean, the way that Bernie did it, and it became sort of a meme in of itself, where like he'd be asked a question about anything, like what's your favorite biscuit, and he'd be like, oh, well, I like such and such, but also the 99% are fucking the poor, and he would just change it to just be that, and it became, like I say, a bit of a meme and a bit tiresome at times, but it works. Don't give in to the stupid question. Start talking about billionaires again. People love that shit.
100%, 100%. And again, trying to make sure that you divert the conversation away from subjects that are going to get to the position where people think that you're somehow to the left of the centre because you're talking about breaking up Big Pharma, quite literally, engaging in populist left-wing politics. By saying, well, I could talk about transgender operations, but I think it's more important that we talk about the fact that everybody in America, regardless of whether they are transgender or not, deserves access to cheap and affordable and available healthcare without having to worry about co-pays or getting denied access by your insurer, which is why I support Medicare for all. And also creating a narrative is important. And that's why the DSA have been so successful too, is that they have created a unifying enemy, which is the billionaires, which is the oligopoly. Like, Trump is, of course, one facet of that, and the Democrats have been really good at corralling their base around the enemy that is Trumpism.
Whilst we're doing very little effective to actually combat Trumpism.
Which is why, again, I mentioned in my Francesca Hong video that it's important that the Democratic Socialists, when they campaign, they have to not only campaign upon them being the billionaires and the oligarchs and creating a narrative that can then bring in people and independents from outside the base, from outside the tent, non-voters, into the coalition, from seeing everything that the oligopoly is doing and who's building the data centers, who's taking away your privacy, who's taking away your freedoms, etc., etc. But it's also a great way of being able to market how you're better at fighting Trump and how you're better at being electable. Which is a point I made, which is that if people can look at how the DSA are winning over these right-wing voters, this is an excellent example of right-wing voters not understanding political economy, but vibing with a candidate because they talk about things that the right talk about, like how everything's unaffordable, for example, even though the right only talked about it insincerely.
Yes.
Then that's a really good way of being able to beat Trump. Because the liberals in the Democratic Party, they vote for moderates because they are terrified of Trump. And if you're a black person in America, understandable. If you're an ethnic minority in America, understandable that you are terrified of Trump. I'm terrified of Trump, and I'm white and I'm in another country. So I can't imagine what you're feeling like, right? But you vote for moderates, or they vote for moderates. I mean, the older kind of black community votes for moderates in large numbers. That's what we've seen from the figures, because it's ideally supposed to be the most electable form of the Democrats. But there are worlds in which you look at this data here and these anecdotes and you can show there is a case for the electability of the left. And that's how the left need to sell themselves in primary elections going forwards.
Yes, indeed. So much can be learned from Mamdani, not just because he won, but because it's actually transferable. The kind of things he was talking about and the kind of strategies he used to get his message across is transferable across borders. That kind of economic populist messaging and focusing on actual real issues that people face rather than, like you say, getting bogged down or whatever is definitely the path forward.
100% agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the fact that he's internationally famous shows you not just he's a personal political talent, but that his strategy is successful.
Yeah, and you can tell his strategy is successful because they're coming after him in waves. And it's the same with Hassan Piker to a degree. They realize that these people are being effective. When you're close to the target, that's when you're going to get most of the flack. And that's why the oligarchs who are genuinely scared of those threats are spending every penny they can to try and convince people that actually these people are bad.
You've been watching a clip from one of my live streams. I do them 5 days a week. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and ring the bell down below to be ensured that you get notified whenever I post new videos and indeed when I go live as well. If you want to support the channel in a more long-term fashion, you can hit the join button down below to become a member. It's 99p and cheaper than a can of Red Stripe. And if you want to become a long-term supporter, you can also do so on Patreon. That's patreon.com/NoJusticeMTG. I'll see you on the next one.